Do you see that giant building behind me? When my husband and I moved here, that was an empty field, and the original plan was that it would be done in 6 months. It's been 5 years, and that thing is still just a shell. When my husband and I lived in Seattle, I had the incredible opportunity to try out the idea of a woodworking school when I managed a woodworking school. When my husband Adam and I started talking about our move to Tennessee and what we wanted to do with what would eventually become the School of All Trades, our community not only just massively supported it, but also wanted to take part. I'd been sharing educational content on YouTube and Instagram about traditional craft, woodworking, growing your own food for almost a decade at this point, and I had so many brands that wanted to invest in this project, knowing how important preserving lost skills actually was. When that first truck of materials arrived on site here, we had a plan for all of the supplies and materials that we would need for the whole project. And then 2 weeks after we broke ground, the world kind of fell apart.
This is the day everything changed.
Californians, New Yorkers, the populations of Illinois and Connecticut will all soon be under orders to stay home.
People couldn't travel anymore. And then all of a sudden, one by one, all of the companies that had promised to support this project, from building materials to financial compensation to future tools or whatever else were gonna eventually come, backed out. And ultimately, we were then left with the reality that we were going to have to hire every single bit of labor ourselves, that we were going to have to purchase all of the rest of the materials outright. And even if those were the only obstacles we were about to face, we were in a good position to still be able to do it. I had been putting money aside for this project for the last 8 years, working multiple jobs, taking on so much extra work, dreaming of the day that I would have a place of my own to invite people into and to share a little bit of what the community had already given me. Unfortunately, those weren't the only obstacles we faced. We've run into issues with permits, with neighbors calling codes on us, with financial troubles, supply chain issues, also having some really stupid confidence in my own abilities to manage the project myself. I thought it was a good idea when I started it to forego the $60,000 I'd have to pay a contractor to do all of that contracting myself. Boy howdy, was that a hard, painful, expensive lesson to learn. You wouldn't think that these two things would be super hard to get since they're on pretty much every building around. But in 2021, when we were trying to get electricity for our building, these were extremely hard to come by. There was a 6 to 9 month waiting list, and even if you could find them, they cost 6 times more than they had cost in 2020. I had a friend of a friend call in a favor, and we were able to find these a little faster and a little discounted, as in we paid $10,000 instead of $2,000, which is what they would have cost before. But at least we got the stuff that we needed to get the electricity hooked up. Or so we thought, because we then waited another 6 months to actually have a pole put up and the line run in. Hi, howdy. I have had so many opportunities to completely lose my faith in humanity after being taken advantage of, cheated, totally ripped off, had so many people I'd paid to show up completely flake. There have been times that I have honestly been so discouraged I want to just say forget it. But as many opportunities for heartbreak as there have been just as many things that absolutely reestablished my faith in humanity. When we were in one particular financial crunch and things just were going wrong left and right, my friends James and Rex got online and started talking about their dreams for what the school would one day become. So many people gave a few dollars here, a cup of coffee there. Some people gave a whole lot more than that because they believed in this project just as much as I do. And we were eventually able to get a roof on the whole building. I don't know how many of you believe in Christmas miracles, but this is definitely one of them. And let me just turn this around so I can show you how good this thing looks and just the evidence of community rallying around a project. 2 years ago, when my best friend decided she wanted to get married here, this place looked like an absolute disaster, but 50 people showed up, and in 10 days, we made more progress than we'd made in the last year and a half combined. And even though we were still a long way from done, it was beautiful. Her wedding was one of the best weddings I've ever been to. It was so fun to celebrate alongside all of our friends and family that had helped us get the venue ready. And then all of us got to see and feel the results of our sweat. That is exactly what I wanted to see happen with the school, and there it was, already happening before we were even finished building it. So what's happened since then? Well, Brittany and Steven had a kid, and a few things have happened with the school too. Let's go take a look and see. Johnny, you wanna come with us? No goats allowed on this tour though. Right as we walk in, we can start to see some of the more egregious things that were pretty disheartening in the initial building process. I've already fixed the fact that there was no headers over the doors right after the contractors left, having put no header over this 6-foot span here. This was sagging awfully, but we can just look only a few inches above it to see our 16-inch on-center floor joists, currently here at 19 inches, 11 inches, 15 inches, and this isn't even the worst of it, folks. We've already started fixing a lot of the actual truly structural problems that contractor introduced. Like here, we had to put in a whole other beam, literally so that this floor wasn't just hanging over on a single nail like it was when they left. Over here, even despite our fix, you can see another not at all funny but kind of humorous use of a board to span the fact that they cut these too short instead of actually taking ownership for the fact that they didn't put in all of the LVLs according to the structural design of the building, or the fact that they didn't cut their lumber to the proper sizes. Integrity at its finest. Also, they were kind enough to use the plywood that was intended for the siding of the building as the flooring for the upstairs instead of actually using the decking that was meant to be the flooring upstairs, which was yet another waste of materials and extreme added cost for me. Seeing entire lines of missed nails is not all that surprising, considering the fact that there is no rhyme or reason to the layout of the flooring joists upstairs, but that's just annoying, if nothing else. There's also just things everywhere you look, like massively important brackets that are supposed to be supporting a whole lot of weight and material, literally not even touching anything. Not great. And God forbid I get overly picky about anything at this point, but why we would put any sort of framing like this for an interior wall inside of the posts, making it harder to drywall around, not to mention, yes, a negligible but very real loss of square footage with this wall taking up even more space. Just why? Why? There's also little fun Easter eggs everywhere, like this, where there's just inexplicably no hanger. If you look at any of the framing in here for longer than 3 seconds, it starts to look like the Jenga pile right before it topples over. Translation, it is not straight. Ignoring for a second the structural concerns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of the LVLs that were in the design for the building originally are still sitting here in a pile on the floor. I know how much each one of these costs. I paid for them individually, and it was super not great for me to find these in a pile behind the school, put there almost as if they were hoping I wouldn't realize that they didn't put them in. I mean, there's stuff like this literally everywhere you look, and honestly, I should have been here monitoring their progress, but unfortunately I was out of town that weekend. I should have had a contract laying out that they needed to follow the plans of the building and that they needed to do their jobs to a standard, not even of excellence, but just of passability at the very least. But I didn't know that I needed to do that. I thought that hiring them and paying them an enormous amount of money was the guarantee I needed to be able to trust that they'd do their jobs. And unfortunately, dealing with both the financial losses and the disappointment and the ultimate fallout of having now to go back and fix all of this just sucked. If you look around me in this room, you'll see a whole lot of wood stacked. 5 years ago, I purchased all of these pieces of wood expecting them to be siding for the exterior of this building. I designed it to look like a log cabin because it was a wood shop. I want it to be warm and inviting. But back when I was designing the building, I had never lived in Tennessee. I had never spent a summer here experiencing the bugs and the humidity. 6 months after we moved here, I talked to my neighbor who does have a log cabin and found out that they have to refinish the wood siding on their house every 2 years to be able to protect it from the bugs and humidity that are everywhere here. This is a 6,500 square foot building. I got an estimate on what refinishing would cost, and that's $15,000 every 2 years. Or if I were to do it myself, 3 months of sanding and painting misery that I really don't want to have to live on a biannual basis. I bit the bullet and bought synthetic siding material for the exterior of the building, literally because it cost less to buy the new siding than to finish it once. When I decided to make the switch from the wood siding look I'd originally hoped for, I still needed to figure out how to make the building look cool. And that provided a beautiful opportunity to spend a week at the table saw cutting trim pieces to actually make this look good, but far more egregiously to spend 3-4 weeks caulking each and every single piece of that trim by hand. And after my finger was finished spreading 17 linear miles of caulk, it was a different shape than when I started. If you've been around this channel for a while, you know that a big part of our move to Tennessee was so that I could expand my farming endeavors. And in that, I have 3 chest freezers. One of them is dedicated entirely to butter and mozzarella cheese for our family pizza nights. But then you get into our freezer that's for pork, and then the freezer for beef. At some point, all of the stuff in our freezers is genuinely irreplaceable. And so the thought of losing that because of a days or a weeks-long power outage is absolutely terrifying. And that is where this unit comes in. This is the Jackery Explorer 3000 Pro, which is the perfect battery backup system for almost any home application or off-grid solution you can imagine. It offers 3,000 watts of power, which is available through, yes, this RV backup plug, but also just regular outlets for your general home electronics. And these 20 amp outlets can power almost any electronic that's in your home. You can run a microwave, an air fryer, an Instapot, and a water heater for your coffee all at the same time without overloading the system. It also has USB ports, USB-C ports. I've seen all kinds of battery backups, but this is actually powerful enough to be a backup home generator. We're not counting on an engine that we only have to use in emergency situations to actually start on command, and we're not having to listen to the noise of a diesel generator. Even if this unit is stored away from a charger for over a year, it will lose less than 10% of its battery charge. So all you have to do is just make sure that you've charged it once a year and it's good to go whenever you need it. Far cooler than the plug though is that you can use auxiliary solar panels to charge it too, and those only take about 3 hours to charge it fully. The fact that this thing is on wheels makes it super handy to scooch it around to wherever you might need to use it. If you're looking for a battery backup or generator for your home, I highly encourage you to check out Jackery. You can find this unit clicking the link in the description of this video, or if you don't need something quite this robust, you can find all kinds of other Jackery products specifically suited to your needs simply by using the search term Jackery online. But I really don't want to focus on the woe is me aspect of all of this. This is a huge project. It has taken a really long time. And as this project has stretched out and taken so long, one of the best ways I've found to stay motivated to eventually, hopefully, finally finish this dang thing is getting the chance to come inside this space and experience at least a piece of what it eventually will be to remind me why we're doing this in the first place. And so to that end, when we got things fixed enough that we could really set things up better in here, my buddy Pat came down and helped me set up some temporary lighting. My buddies Rob and Jimmy came down and helped me move all of my heavy tools in here. And it's pretty sweet to have a functional wood shop again, especially one that I don't have to push all my tools into the center of the room and dust off all the goat poop before I start a project. And so it may seem a lot less believable for me to say that the cavalry is arriving and we are actually looking towards getting past the finish line finally 5 years later, but I'll risk being wrong and say it again, because boy howdy, in a project like this, you need to hold on to hope more than anything else. Let me show you. Let me actually try not to die as I climb up this ladder. We are all about safety here, but let me just say that a polished concrete floor, slippery with sawdust, and a ladder that has the propensity to slip are not a good combination. I quite literally nearly died earlier this week, but as my mom always says, my guardian angel was working overtime. Remember all those piles of wood we were looking at downstairs, and I was telling you how it was supposed to be siding? Well, this probably doesn't look like a lot, but in this grand scheme of the building, it was a lot. This past week, our best friends Austin and Rachel came down. They brought their other friend Elijah, and we all worked together to fix all of the framing issues that were formerly causing structural issues with the building and laying this floor. That also involved moving hundreds and hundreds of boards and lots of insulation. And unfortunately, this isn't the first time we've had to move any of this stuff. But that's what you get when projects take 5 years. This floor turned out so much cooler than I could ever have hoped. Yes, we do have to still sand it and finish it and do all those things, but let's not get ahead of ourselves as far as process. This is 1,900 square feet up here. This is going to end up being one of my very favorite spaces in the school when it's finished. And even as ridiculous as it was to be moving and removing all of that wood and all of this insulation, it felt so good to be back in this space, to be spending time with friends, to be building together, but also to be rebuilding hope. Because literally not having 500 boards that used to be in the middle of the floor downstairs, still in the middle of the floor downstairs, now having them actually serving a purpose. And of course, also having the commitment from Austin and Rachel that they're gonna be coming back as long and as often as it takes to get this building done. And that's the closest we've been to a guarantee that this is actually gonna end that we've had in 2 years. And that's a big deal. This project should not have taken 5 years. It would not have taken 5 years if I had hired a contractor. All of our delays and setbacks aside, there is one common theme that has been the biggest setback of them all, and that is lack of focus. Multitasking is a myth. That is a lesson that I, an eternal optimist, someone who loves productivity hacks and getting the absolute most out of my days and my time, has had to learn the hard way over and over and over. And this project was probably the best teacher my life has yet had to offer me. This is an enormous project. Even if things had gone completely according to plan, there were so many details and phone calls and hurdles that needed to be overcome that required an immense amount of focus that I, a person who still has a full-time job, who also has a farm and some other interests, could not give the project. Or better stated, chose not to give this project because of the other sacrifices I would have to make to be able to do so. And that was a huge miss. That's why I've taken so much extra financial responsibility and made it my own problem to pivot every way that I've needed to throughout this project. It's not felt good a lot of the time. When Adam and I moved to Tennessee, a huge piece of our first 2-year financial plan involved me being able to use this space to teach classes on a regular basis. Instead, it's basically just been a money pit and a really fancy looking on the outside storage facility for Howdy's hay. I think we can all laugh about how true this phrase has really become for all of us, but hindsight really is 20/20. 5 years into this project, I can look at pretty much every single instance of a setback or a painful lesson and actually see so much good in it. The absolute terror that gripped me as we were losing sponsors left and right at the beginning of the shutdown has 5 years in actually turned into a lot of hidden blessings. A really great example of that is a sponsor that was initially going to provide us with a bunch of really cool window garage doors for the front of the building. And I love windows and I love walls that can open, and that would have been so cool to have had. But when they dropped out because of supply chain issues, I had to completely redesign the exterior of the building. And I absolutely love what we came up with. I went to a local window supply place and asked them if they had any overstock or accidental order windows. And because someone had ordered those custom windows and then never came to pick them up, they were heavily discounted. And I used the shape of those two windows to redesign the whole exterior of the building. And honestly, I think the way it ultimately turned out is way cooler than it was ever initially gonna be. It doesn't look like a wood cabin anymore, but it does look like a turn-of-the-century colonial house, and I love the natural choice white paint we chose for the exterior. That's a joke, because the color is actually called natural choice. I love the way the cherry doors that I built by hand from a cherry tree that Greg Pennington and I cut down before I ever even knew I was moving to Tennessee looks against that white siding. I will never forget building those cherry doors with my woodworking mentor, Steve Dando. And the ultimate blessing of me not hiring a contractor like I should have, and this project taking so much longer than it should have, is that by the time this building is done, I will have touched, designed, worked on, and finessed every single piece of this building. And I will have more ownership and more pride in it than I ever could have otherwise. So many of my friends and family and even strangers have ultimately become involved in this project in a really meaningful way, and we will be connected because of what we've already done, and it's not even done yet. And when we actually get this thing done, which we will, we are going to have one heck of a party to celebrate. And then we're gonna start teaching some really cool classes. People are gonna come from all over the place to learn new skills, to build confidence, to build strength of character, but far more importantly, they're going to build friendships. The kinds of friendships that last. I cannot wait to shake your hand as you walk through the door of the School of All Trades. See you then.